This is Surfing Through Cinema. I'm your host, Hawaii Harry. Today I'll be discussing the next film for James Bond Week. Starring Sean Connery in his second go as James Bond, this episode is all about From Russia with Love. Okay, so to start off, I'll talk about what I liked and what I didn't like about the plot. So, what I really liked, the scene between Sean Connery and Robert Shaw, who plays one of the main villains in this film. They're fighting on a train in some of the best stunt work I've seen in a 1960s movie. You know, they're actually punching each other, they're drawing blood. It's really, really cool. Kind of like a not James Bond, Jason Bourne type of fighting style. Really cool. And you could tell they spent a lot of time and effort working on it because it wasn't a quick sequence. It was actually a pretty long one. And yeah, I thought that was really great. And what I didn't like, it seems that the ending was rushed, and that the Russian spy who was actually working for Spectre, she did not seem that much of a villain. She was hardly in it, and I feel like Robert Shaw's character was more the villain. But other than that, those are my thoughts on the plot. And so now I'll get into the song that they use at the beginning, which is a huge James Bond trope. I didn't really like this one. It's not very creative visually, and it was just words and text on people. You know, it wasn't that interesting, and felt kind of last minute, like they hardly put any effort into it. And they should also have added elements to do with Russia. You know, it didn't really have anything. It just had little clips from the movie in it, which I guess is cool, but I think they could have done a lot more with it. All right. And then next, we'll be talking about the villain. So were his motives clear, and was he a good antagonist? So in this case, it was the lady from Spectre. This is another example of a very weak villain. I know Spectre technically is the real villain, but the lady who works for them pretending to be a Russian is, like I said, hardly in the film and isn't that menacing, really. You know, the only sequence we see her fighting, she gets taken down almost instantly. You know, she wasn't that great of a villain. And honestly, it should have just been Robert Shaw's character, because he was very intense and scary. You know, he hardly says a word of dialogue. I think it was like over an hour into it that we actually start hearing from him. But the rest of the time, he's training. He killed a guy who looks like James Bond, and as like practice work, he's a pretty good villain. I think it should have just been him, and it should have been where he's just chasing Bond throughout Europe or whatever, and then Spectre showing up at the end of the movie to kind of tie into the next one. But it is what it is. That's what they did. All right, so that's the plot, song, and the villain. I'm going to go on a break real quick, but first, here's a message from our sponsor. This podcast is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Here's how. It's totally free. There are tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your computer and even your cell phone. But that's not all. Anchor distributes your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You could even make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Anchor is everything you need to make a complete podcast all in one small place. So go on and download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Okay, so now that we're back from our break, I'm going to get into the Bond girl, Bond himself, and then my overall score for the movie. So the Bond girl, she was an okay actress. She didn't have too many lines of dialogue. Like Ursula Andress, she was definitely just picked for her looks, not for her acting abilities. She didn't really do much either. You know, in the book, from my understanding, she was a KGB agent, which I kind of wish they kept in this one. That would have been interesting to see two different agencies of spies fighting against each other, but they didn't do that, and she's kind of knocked out for a good portion of it, so she really is kind of useless to the plot and didn't bring much to it. But she got along with Bond, I guess, but it really just felt like a one night stand thing. It didn't feel like a real connection. So I think she's also a weak Bond girl. And then the next, so Bond himself. Um, Again, I think Sean Connery is still the best part of this movie and of Doctor No. Um, in this one, he's a lot grittier, a lot more violent, which you kind of see in more of the Daniel Craig, even Timothy Dalton films, which I kind of like more. Is I guess in the novels. I haven't read them, but apparently he's a lot more violent and a lot more cutthroat than in like the Roger Moore ones, where he's more comedic. So I think that was really good, and he's still got that charm. He's still got those silly one-liners, and like I said, he was really good fighting wise against Robert Shaw's character. So, but I think he was the best. Best part of it. Had a lot more action scenes, and I really liked when they were driving boats. That was pretty cool too. So yeah, I think this is a great Sean Connery Bond movie, but everything else was kind of weak. He was definitely the highlight, definitely the star. So overall, kind of like with the last one, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I found the villain to be pretty weak, the Bond girl to be pretty weak, and the opening song, which all of those are huge elements that are important to a Bond movie, so that's why I gave it a lower score. All right, so those are my thoughts and feelings on From Russia with Love. I wish I liked it more, but it was kind of mediocre. It was okay of a movie. But surprisingly, it did really well, and as a result, we have more James Bond movies, so maybe if I watch it again someday, I'll like it more, but who knows. Alright, so next time I'll be discussing the next film for Disney Week, all about high society, jazz music, and cats. This episode is all about the Aristocats. Alright, well until next time, this has been Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Surfing Through Cinema. Make sure to check us out on Facebook at Surfing Through Cinema with Hawaii Harry and on Instagram with Surfing Through Cinema. We also have a website, www.anchor.fm/Surfing Through Cinema, where you can learn more details on upcoming episodes and on past episodes.